episode 135 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from WoW Insider, out DPS, and the newly rebooted Call to Auction with a whole 2 episodes, week after week. Oh no, we missed a week. Well, whatever. It's still coming out.
Yeah, sure. We'll see if that lasts. And this is Frosttime from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frosttime WHU on Twitter.
And Dark...
Oh!
You're
I was going to make fun of...
off that way, are you?
Oh,
I was going to make fun of Darkbrew before you did your line. Here, you introduce yourself, and then I'll make fun of Darkbrew.
I took his line too, so there. And I'm Molly Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast, and this is taking my line. I'm taking Darkbrew's line. If you want to participate in the chat room, just type explosive shot in the chat window, and you'll be prompted to register.
In case you're wondering why Darkbrew isn't reading that line, we are all assuming that he's taking singing lessons from a vocalist in preparation for the upcoming Hunter song.
Interesting.
I really wish that was true.
I hear he has a beautiful voice.
Well, speaking of the chat room, we are joined today in the live chat room by Abilene314, Akator, Avarice, BM Jager, Ellipide, Get the Gobo, GT Youngblood, Havtor, Hotshot Gunt, Induates, JC Sway, Kilokai, Leywellen, Mogatau, Morgthau, Mullingrew, Necri, Premox, Scruffy, Sindra the Hunter, Tagyar, Lullit1, Warvinny, and as always, your lovely moderator, Ollie Sonder. If you have a question for us, please send it in a private message to Ollie Sonder, and she will rank the order in which your questions get asked, and in fact determine whether or not they get asked or not, because we have a lot of news to go over, based on your best selling point of the U.S. to try to convince fan Leywellen, however you pronounce it, to move from the cold, dark, desolate land of Norway, where there's nothing but like delightful armored bears, over to the U.S. so that she can then raid with the WHU guild. So some selling points of the U.S. is what we need.
I just want to say that after all this time, you still don't know her name. She's been in the chat room for forever.
And has he been mispronouncing it for like the last year and a half?
Well, except I only ever see it written, and I have no idea how to pronounce it. It's not like I need to just look at it and go, oh, that's what it is. It's Laeiweyn. How do you pronounce that? I don't know.
I was thinking Leylewin? Well, anyways.
Leylewin.
That's
what we need, suggestions on how to pronounce Leylewin's name.
Except that doesn't really work well through a text messaging platform.
And on to the news. Mists of Pandaria Beta. General, go.
Oh, you missed the announcements.
Wow, that was harsh. That was hurtful, Ollie. So we do have a couple of Hunter announcements for this week. The first of which is the WHU All Hunter 25-man raid did in fact continue its raiding exploits, and they successfully took down Atramedes and then went on to take down Maloriak with a 25-man raid of all hunters. This is a normal mode raid, obviously not LFR, for which they're not available. But so congratulations to WHU raid. Also, in other announcements, Balthazar and I have launched a Kickstarter project to fund the Hunter Fuel, an entire album of new original Hunter songs. If you're in the live chat room, there's a link to it just up and to the right. And if you're listening to this from any of our sites, I'm sure we all will have links there. But yeah, no, the idea is, for those of you who don't know, Balthazar's the guy who did the music and vocals for the I'm a Hunter song and I Won't Miss You. And he is a full-time professional freelance composer and sound designer. And he doesn't actually play WoW. So it's been very difficult to, talk him into, like taking a week unpaid to make another song for us. And so the solution was to do a Kickstarter. And so, hey, if it's worth it to get a bunch of new cool Hunter songs, go ahead and support the Kickstarter project. And I launched this on Thursday night. So in the day and a half since it launched, we've already the way we've got it structured is at different funding levels, we'll get more and more and more songs. So rather than all or nothing, you get a whole album or nothing at all. Get one song and then another song and another song. We've actually unlocked the first three songs already. The first one is just to do a new original Hunter song. The second goal that we unlocked was the Hunter Open Collab, which is to get Balthazar to sing in Tainted Lore's Hunter Open Collab, which is pretty awesome. And just as the show started today, we unlocked the special secret Hunter community song. This project is a little bit secret, but extra awesome. It's actually something that I've been trying to get Balthazar to do for like almost 2 years, I think. And he's been like, dude, I don't have time. It takes too much time. So that's going to happen. And our next goal will be to unlock the Hunter Love Song. And
Okay, the Hunter Love Song, I gotta say, I think I'm much more interested in a redo of the original Hunter song that we were using as our show notes.
That
or
is
as our
also,
show intro.
that is the goal after the Hunter Love Song.
Can you switch those? That would make me happy.
I cannot. Instead,
I'm not a romantic at heart. I think you can tell. But I definitely want to get all the new versions of Armor into that song.
Yeah, no, it's just so the goals, just so everybody knows, we got the three that we've already hit. Then the Hunter Love Song is next. Then it's the I'm a Hunter remake, where we're also going to like update it and get rid of some of that outdated stuff. Then there'll be another new Hunter song. Then another new Hunter song that's twice as badass. Then we're going to have the Spore Bat song. I think
that should have been first on the list.
And then eventually, we get all the way up to do an entire Hunter album with at least 10 songs on it. So, and we had to, we made a little video for it, which Kickstarter made us do. It's probably the worst video that I have ever made in my life. Holy crap. It was a horrible camera, and it was horrible lighting, and the person who was running it, who assured us on all sorts of stuff, nothing was the way that they said it was. But, so, new Hunter music. At this point, we're already getting a new original Hunter song, the special community Hunter song, which is going to be sweet, even though it's secret, and then the Hunter Open Collab, and yeah, the next two is the Hunter Love Song, and then the I'm a Hunter remake.
I gotta say, I was impressed with the level of participation you were able to get. I mean, I looked at it last night, and I'm like, whoa, that was fast. Like, people were like seriously getting involved and like really immediately, just going and kickstarting it. I didn't. I don't know. I'm a bit of a pessimist. I didn't expect to see that much of a response that quickly. So I'm very, very impressed with the Hunter community.
Yeah, I am as well, and I'm very encouraged. I think while it would be ridiculously awesome to get all the way to doing the whole Hunter album, I'm a little pessimistic about that one. But I'm very optimistic that we're going to get a couple more Hunter songs out of this, and I'm already
just so long as we get an update to the first song, that'll make me happy.
Well, you know what you should do? You should actually promote the Kickstarter on your blog.
Nobody reads my blog. What are you kidding? They all listen to the podcast.
Of course, people read your blog. They're just continually disappointed every time they go there and find out there's been no new post.
Yeah, I got to work on that. I've been having just too many draws on my time, but I'm gonna try and get back into the swing of things. Hopefully,
I know what you should do. You should quit doing the Call to Auction podcast and do your blog instead.
Call to Auction is very popular, and it's one of the
Except I don't care about it. But I care about Hunter blogs.
Well, we should probably spend some time talking about the news.
Yes. So in the news front, we actually had a bunch of Ghostcrawler posts on the Hunter forums. We did have some Mists of Pandaria beta changes. I guess it's probably worth going to some of the blue posts first, since they address stuff that was later changed.
Yeah.
But
well,
I guess let's start at the top. The Mists of Pandaria cinematic will premiere at Gamescom on August 16th.
Who cares? I'm more interested in the AoE.
I was going to say that tends to give us some idea of when Mists of Pandaria is actually going to be releasing. And it's starting to look like probably September is going to be Mists of Pandaria.
So you owe Darkbrew a beer? because that would make it right on the money for what he picked, and considerably after the money for what you picked.
But before the money for what you picked.
I didn't pick anything, did I?
Yeah, when we were first talking about this ages ago, you thought it was going to be winter.
Oh, well, winter is coming. No. No, I'm no good at predicting things. I wouldn't have put any actual money on it. I wouldn't even put a friendship bracelet. With shipping, these can be expensive, especially if you buy a lot of them. Okay, so yeah, let's go through the rest of these here. They're talking about pre-mades. They're not going to do any level 90 pre-mades for Municipal. I don't understand that.
This breaks my heart, because let me tell you what happened in Cataclysm. In Cataclysm Beta, every time they slowly increased the level cap, I spent a ridiculous amount of time leveling up, and I flippin' hate leveling. Because I was like, okay, I need to get to the level cap so that I can test the level cap abilities. And then I finally, they finally removed the restrictions. You could level all the way up to 85. And I'm leveling and leveling whenever I can find free time. It was just horrible. And then I'm like, sweet, I'm 85. And then like 2 days later, they put in 85 pre-mates. And so this time, Miss Panaria, I was like, screw it. I am not leveling in the beta. I'm just going to, I thought I was going to at first, but I was like, screw it, I hate this. I'm just going to wait for the pre-mades. Instead, I'm going to spend my time, crunching numbers and exploring and stuff. And now, I'm still level 85 in the beta. I'm like half a bar from 86, and now I find out, oh yeah, there's going to be no pre-mades. Screw you, Frost Time!
Yeah, see, I don't get that. Why would they want to limit the number of level 90 characters that can test? I mean, that is where, because honestly, most people are going to level, a couple of months in the beginning of the expansion. They're going to get their level at 90, and then after that, most of their time is going to be spent on their main doing, in-game things. I don't understand.
Yeah, they addressed it. They said that they found that as soon as they make level 90 pre-mades available, nobody tests any of the content before then. Nobody is testing like all of their quests and the leveling zones, and they said they feel they still want a lot of testing of all of that. So I understand why it still sucks, because it's like, really, wouldn't it be more important to be testing level 90 stuff? Because if there's like, oh, this quest is buggy, that's annoying, that's not nearly as big a deal as, oh, this level 90 ability doesn't work right.
Right, and this quest is broken, and that's annoying. That's the kind of thing that is going to get tested even if they have level 90s, because people are going to go and do all the quests, just like most people go and do, all kinds of quests in live. They want to explore the new
they said
continent.
That's not the case. They said that's not their experience.
Well, I mean, I suppose it's just a matter of the difference in the population on beta versus the population in live, maybe. But the other thing they could have done is just said, no level 90 pre-mades until we're satisfied with the level of testing on the 85 to 90 experience.
Right. And that's a good point, right? Because at some point, it's like, hey, we're content with the leveling. Let's try to focus on one of the things is like raiding, for testing raids. Making level 90 pre-mades is an important step to getting more people to test your raid content. Yeah.
And what you're saying is every single one of those people will have had to have sank the equivalent of 2, full-time jobs into this, experience, plus having to deal with, like you said, buggy quests. I remember reading stories about beta testers who were trying to get to the next level cap, and they were literally grinding mobs that were green to them because there was no other way to do it. And sometimes when you have to hit that in order to open up new quests, that's just what you got to do. Well, there's no way that is a valid use of a tester's time when, the game, especially because it's beta and it doesn't really matter, it's all going to get wiped anyways, could just simply arbitrarily change your level to whatever they feel is appropriate.
It's also worth noting, though, I have gained almost an entire level by grinding mobs in the course of testing stuff.
That's funny.
But the amount of time
that's the first one.
Well, the amount of time that that's the first level, and the amount of time that I've spent in the beta for getting one level is grotesque. Because most of my time has been spent on the dummies, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so if anybody wants to level my beta hunter, you did contact me and let me know. Because good lord, I want to get testing stuff at 90, but now it's been so long. Now I'm suddenly like, oh god, I don't know if I'm going to have time to level all the way up to 90 before. But now it's like, dude, I have to do that. That's the only way I'm going to be able to, get all of the numbers of everything at level 90 and figure out what the rotations are and how this compares to that. It's horrible. I got to get to 90 now, but I'm seriously concerned about my time availability. Anyhow, so Hunter AoE, you said something changed there?
Yeah, so it looks like we're getting an across-the-board damage buff, and they're intended to be worth using on single target, and they're currently not.
Okay,
Um,
but for correction, you're talking about the level 90 talents now.
yeah, yeah, I am. So like barrage. Now here's the thing though. It looks like the okay. So binding shot got a cooldown reduction, but barrage got a reduction in damage, like
Yeah, so what
320 down from 400.
Yeah, so what happened here was they were talking about the fact that they were going to reduce the damage of barrage, and somebody on the forums was like, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous! It already sucks." And Ghostcrawler responded and said, "All of the Hunter level 90 talents are getting an across-the-board damage buff, and they're intended to be worth using single target, and they're not currently." He acknowledged, and then he said it just meant that barrage's damage will be lowered a bit relative to power shot. And then he also commented, this is important, Hunter ranged attacks should not be blockable, and they currently are. This is a known issue that will be fixed. That's nice to hear. But so it sounds to me like what he's saying is, we're going to buff everything, but first we're going to nerf Barrage, and then we're going to get everything buffed up to where it should be.
I see.
Because
Yeah,
Barrage
it's all about relative, like
So
the
yeah, we
relative
saw
power
the
between the abilities.
so we saw the Barrage nerf, but we have yet to see the kind of across the board buff. Other than we did see, binding shots cooldown go from 90 to 60 seconds.
But again, that's really for PvP or like situational PvE.
But on the topic of AOE, we did have we had a blue post talking about Survival's AOE getting buffed. Remember we talked about that last week?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing is, one of the live abilities wasn't actually live on beta. And so we saw two AoE buffs come in the latest data mining from MMO Champion. The first of which is Improved Serpent Sting, which is giving, this is the classic survival thing, it's giving survival when Serpent Sting is applied, it does 30% of the Serpent Sting's total damage on application. It does not increase the critical strike chance of your Serpent Sting ticks by 10%. And that's fine.
Now okay, and the other one is now survival.
Bombardment!
Well, survival is improved surfacing is going to be survival only. That was the other thing to bear in mind. So
It was anyway.
okay.
But the other big one is Marksman. Marksmanship is getting a huge buff to Bombardment. If you guys will recall, right now, Bombardment, when your multi-shot crits, it makes your multi-shot cost half the focus for the next 5 seconds. So, Marksman in AoE situations can just fire a lot more multi-shots, but it was still clearly worse than Survival, and now that BM got Beast Cleave, it's clearly worse than BM. So they're buffing Bombardment so that now, when your multi-shot crits and you trigger Bombardment, it still cuts the focus cost of your multi-shots in half for 5 seconds, but now it also increases the damage that your multi-shot does by 30%.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I mean, that's basically a 30% AoE buff right there.
Yeah, the crit calculations are a little weird. It seems to be that your entire multi-shot crits or it doesn't, rather than having separate calculations for each individual shot. If they had a separate calculation for each individual shot, then as soon as one of them, at standard Hunter's crit rate, even in the midst of Pandaria deflation, you still, as long as you have enough mobs, it's a pretty good chance that one of them will crit, which means this is a guaranteed on your first, maybe second one, you're going to get Bombardment.
I'm pretty sure they actually do calculate separately.
Okay, I haven't. This is something that we talked about once, and we said we would go and retest, or I said I would go and retest, and I never did.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just my imagination, but I seem to remember. I seem to remember seeing like, I do need to go and test that. But, anyways, if this does happen on the first or second time, it's basically going to be, a 30% additional boost to AOE for Marksman, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It's pretty sweet. That's the as far as I'm concerned, that's the big change in the last round of stuff. Also, we were complaining last week about the Murder of Crows nerfs. It seems we didn't see a change to that, but I am willing to bet that we're going to see Murder of Crows buffed back up, or possibly the other talents nerfed. But I think we're going to see Murder of Crows improved. I just, after playing with the numbers more, I cannot see. There's no way they can leave it the way it is now.
Mm.
So let's see. We also had a blue post talking about aspect dancing and about the idea
Near
of
and dear to my heart.
using and specifically the idea of using macros to automatically change your aspect based on what shot you're firing, which basically means you can, in theory, just ignore aspects and just always be in the best aspect for your instant shots. Theoretically, to be optimal, you still need to manually change for your cast time shots for your Cobra or steady shot because you don't want to be in Fox while you're standing still. But we did get Ghostcrawler saying that they don't consider that to be fun gameplay. And says you're basically just opting out of aspects as a mechanic and always benefiting from the right aspect because you're, quote, clever enough to know there is a macro. It's like usually in this situation, we put the stance on the normal global cooldown or make the shared GCD longer. I really desperately hope they don't put aspects on the GCD
Yeah,
because
in PvE,
that would be awful.
it would be manageable. I've been managing my aspects manually in PvE for a long time. I still have aspect of the Hawks macroed into my instant shots just in case I screw it up, but it's very rare that I have to go into Fox. If you use proper management and you try and move during instance and use disengage properly, then you'll never, not never, but you'll very rarely miss, a steady shot or something like that because of bad aspect management.
Yeah.
Um,
Although I have to say but if they put it on the global cooldown, then
no,
it's
but
going
my
to
point
cost.
is, I would have to unmacro it, but if they put it on the global cooldown, my game would not change that much. I would still manage it
Except
manually,
except you would lose a global cooldown every time you switched aspects.
which is very rare. Maybe one. There's only a couple of fights that require me to go into Fox in order to get my steadies off, and
Except
most
except
content tiers are like that.
yeah, except my experience is you use Fox a lot more in progression when you're first doing a boss before you know where to stand and where to be. And so it's more meaningful on the times that it matters more, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, so the faster you learn it, the faster you can get to that ideal point where you're not using it. And that's fine. I would still be fine with that. Where I would not be fine with that is PvP. In PvP right now, you have to have them basically macroed. It's not a choice
Right.
because even if you're standing still, there's a fairly strong possibility that you're going to have to move. If you're standing still in PvP for longer than 2 seconds, chances are you're not doing it right. Sometimes you can. So it is helpful to have the ability to not automatically, switch to Fox when you cast your steady or your Cobra, I suppose, if you're BM. But that's not the situation for the vast majority of PvP environments. Normally, you have something nearby you that you can use to get away from trouble, and you have to use it as long as the other team is not, horrible. I think they need to find a way to make aspects. If they do put them on a global cooldown, everybody's just going to always go in Fox, and the only time hunters will go into Hawk is when they've used a big cooldown and they can afford to use some more cooldowns to not have to move as much. Like if you use Roar Sacrifice on yourself, maybe you won't have to kite as hard to avoid incoming damage or get out of line of sight if you've just blown rapid fire, for example.
Yeah.
I think what they should do for the aspects is they should redesign it to the playstyle that PvP has, but only make that actually important in PvP. I don't know how they could separate the ability. I'm sure there's a clever design that they could come up with that would make it so that PvPers, have, or maybe they could even just make a third aspect that's just so desirable in terms of PvP that nobody would ever use anything else and make the whole stance dancing thing a bit of a moot point. But stance dancing is not fun to do in PvP, especially because if you are standing still, you almost, it's like you have to make a very split-second decision. Do I want to stay in Hawk and earn just a teeny tiny bit more damage from this steady shot, or do I want to go to Fox and make sure that I don't miss my double steady shot so that I can get my haste bonus, so I can line it up with my cooldowns and try and burst down one of their players. It's not. I don't
Yeah.
think a fun way to make hunters play. And more to the point, if they were to put it on the global cooldown, it would make hunters suffer in PvP more than I think they should.
Yeah, and it sounds like their alternative to that is to make it because right now there's a sort of internal cooldown, shared cooldown of aspects of 1 second. And they're talking about maybe making that longer, right? Maybe making it 2 seconds or 3 seconds, so you can't just flop back and forth every single time you do a shot. But it sounds like that'll bring up some of the same problems in PvP, which will kind of result in hunters just...
No, actually, in PvP, it wouldn't be the end of the world. What you do is, assuming you're not trying to stand still and cast a steady shot. I'm going to use Marks as the example because that's what I know. What you do is you have your macro set up so that it tries to cast Aspect of the Fox and then it casts your steady shot. But because of the way that latency works with the macros being server-side, you can't just stand there and press it once. You have to literally spam your key while moving until eventually the steady shot, the fox catches, and then the steady shots can start. Otherwise, if you're standing still, it'll just stay in and and Aspect of the Fox is on cooldown, which happens fairly often. Then hitting the key once, you'll start it off in Aspect of the Fox of the Hawk, and that'll mean that you can't move, or more to the point, you will move, and when you move, you'll interrupt your cast.
Yeah. So one of the other, I'm going to be curious to see what they do with that, but it's definitely sad. Now, I should point out historically, when things have always been macroed in, Blizzard has usually changed it, but they've always gone one of two ways, right? Either they did something to break the ability to macro it, often putting a global cooldown on it, or they just went, screw it, we'll just give you the ability for free.
Yeah.
And I wish they would go that way, but I kind of understand why they won't. Kind of understand their logic of, hey, yeah, we want this to be a choice. We want it to occupy some amount of your attention in order to get this benefit. And I almost wish there was just a way they could break the macro without actually
right now
changing
there's two choices, actually. You have the choice to move or not move, and then if you do move, you have the choice to move in such a way that you can continue doing steady shots, or you have the choice to try and move in such a way that you can only cast instant shots. They could accomplish what I think they're going for by eliminating macros and replacing them with a buff like sniper training. So when you're not moving, if you can manage to start and finish a steady shot without moving, you get an X% damage boost to that shot. And
yeah, except I think they want you to have the additional brain span required to push the buttons and determine.
I think the brain span that I suppose that is true. Otherwise, it wouldn't.
And then there's a risk. And then there's a risk associated with it, right? Like I'm in Hawk, I start casting steady shot. Oh shoot! Now I have to move.
It's not a risk. It always happens. You always have to move in PvP. So
Well, sure, but I mean,
unless they change the class so that we have.
It's not a PvP only ability, though. We have to look at both ends, both the real game and then the stupid PvP game.
Well, I think that I think that making it more of a sniper training style would actually have some of what they are currently designing in. Like you would still have the optimization potential of not moving. Like if you could manage to stay still, because even sniper training wasn't designed very well. There are like windows where you could move and you keep it up and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like you had like 6 seconds of free movement and 10 seconds of standing still. But if they made it an instant, while you're moving, you get a debuff that prevents or you don't get a buff. And if you don't move for a certain amount of time or whatever, however they want to do it, then you get this buff. But the point is, that would allow the hunters to still play the meta game of where can I stand where I won't have to move, and they can do that in PvE and PvP. If you're a hunter and you don't want to move, there are certain maps where you can just find a place that makes it harder for melee to get to you, and especially now that we have the minimum range removal, I expect that the choice will be, right now there is no choice. If you're playing against a melee and they get to you, you have to move, because while they're there, they can damage you and you can't damage them.
Yeah. I like the mechanic of I need to make a decision of which aspect to hit by pushing a button. I just wish they could keep it the way it is in a way that didn't allow it to be macroed.
Yeah,
I think
that we agree on. We agree on the idea of not having macros. I don't like any situation where macros are a requirement, and right now for PvP they are. So
yeah. Also in the blue posts, we did get some disturbing news about spells that summon things. Where Ghostcrawler sort of mentioned that something else is not really important, but he said that we have a lot of abilities that summon extra creatures for hunters, including Stampede. And then he said this can create client performance problems on lower-end machines, so we may ultimately have to redesign some of them. And then he stressed, that he said we don't want to hear raid or battleground leaders asking hunters not to use certain abilities. Like, can you imagine that? You're going to in your 25-man raid, and the raid leader's like, okay, Jimbo, the healer's machine always stalls when you cast Stampede, so no Stampedes. That would suck. So
Well,
he's
do you
saying
remember?
Mhm.
Oh, anyways, go ahead.
No, so he's saying that they may redesign some of them to sort of reduce the client strain, and he said Stampede would be the last one that they touch. So that to me means Murder of Crows is probably highest on the list because it summons right now it's like 8 different crows that are
I
there
would be
for a
perfectly
long time.
happy. I would be perfectly happy with 8 featureless blobs that just hovered around my head like I don't know, some sort of cloud of featureless blobs that do damage for me. Going back to the old unskinned featureless blob pet joke. I actually have faith in Blizzard's ability to do this because when the current patch came out, there was an encounter that had I can never remember the two. The two first generals after that first fight in DS. The guy that has stupid tentacles that spawn everywhere.
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
like Yorsage. And the point is, at some point in normal mode, you're supposed to go stack up on him after he hits the void zone or whatever for that last time and gets the debuffs. And for the first couple of weeks, even my machine, and I have a fairly high end machine. Would go down to a fairly low frame rate, and inevitably we would have people DCing and their games crashing and stuff like that. There was some sort of problem with the type of visuals that they had done. Anyways, within a couple, and I didn't see any blue posts about this. Maybe I just missed it, but within a couple of weeks the problems went away, and I don't know what they changed because it looks the same to me, except now I don't have any frame rate issues and I don't lose my healers. So I have confidence that they are capable of fixing this problem without requiring an increase in the minimum specs. But
Yeah, and
that's
one
what
of the
I'm
things it
hoping.
looks like they've already done is when Murder of Crows first launched, it was around 15 crows, and now it's like 8. And they do more
Hey,
damage.
yeah, that's the
Uh,
kind of thing I'm fine with.
yeah, and I'm totally cool with that too, because frankly, it's cool watching the crows fly in, but once they're all there, they're all on top of each other. It doesn't look like a whole bunch of crows unless the target's moving.
Yeah, the
Uh,
other thing is, do they show up on enemy nameplates if an opposing hunter does that to in PvP?
I would assume so, because you can target and kill them.
Can you tab target? Like, would you have to tab target?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
you can
okay,
tab
because
over
that
to it. You can click on them or you can tab to them.
okay, so that strikes me as the kind of thing where less is really better because otherwise you're basically just penalizing the players who aren't necessarily smart enough to have arena frames add-ons that allow them to get past all this, or people who use mouse over macros, for example, would be possibly penalized. They could fix it by making the things fly a little bit above their point of view, but
Yeah. Um, and so we got a huge post about clipping dots.
oh my
And
god, this is an awesome post.
yeah, and there's a lot of information there. It's not super important. The important thing is they haven't yet in the MOP beta, but they're going to change the way explosive shot works. And I guess
I was
as some
so excited.
as some background, I should point out that at one point we had like data mined some information about explosive shot only ticking once and stuff. That's not happening. Explosive shot is still ticks twice. Hits once, ticks twice. Lock and load still gives you 2 free explosive shots. So right now the beta is just like live in that regard. But they say they're going to change the way that explosive shot dot works, so it works just the way piercing shots does now. And the long and the short of it means you can spam your as many explosive shots as you can back to back. You're never going to clip anything. You're never going to lose any damage.
Which I would love. I'm going to have to untrain myself from my habit right now.
No
Of,
kidding.
it's going to be so bad because I've got shot queuing, right? And that's the one thing, or well, one of a few things, but that's one of a few things that breaks up my shot queuing. Like I have to like hold my hand over that key and just wait, and I'm never sure if I'm waiting too long or not long enough. And I sometimes go and look at my logs and I try and make sure that the number of ticks I get is divisible by 3 over a whole night. It's a little much to expect that, especially because things die before the dots disappear.
Right.
But it's impossible to know for sure. And I think that if they can really make this work without us having to think about silly mechanics like dot overwriting, then I think that would be awesome. I was so excited when I read this.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so, I mean, The short version of the mechanic change is basically when you reapply the dot, it just like it does now, it'll add one tick on, but then it'll just take any damage remaining that hasn't ticked yet, add it on to the new damage, and redivide it by the number of ticks. And so it's really it's a mechanic that they've had for a long time. I mean, piercing shots has always worked this way, as
Not
well as
always. I remember when piercing shots came out, there was some trouble with that.
there was piercing shots worked this way in Wrath.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they've had this mechanic around for a long time. I'm so happy that they're finally having Explosive Shot use this mechanic. So now it's that lock and load procs, and you just pew pew pew. All right, moving on, other stuff.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it also makes a little bit more burst because you're no longer having any hesitation.
Or interleaving shots. I mean, the cost of delaying one of those free explosive shots by a little bit goes down considerably when you compare it to if you have something like if you can do some focus regen in the middle that will prevent you from pushing back a black arrow or something like that. That's the kind of thing that if you were to run the sims or the numbers, and you would see that it's really not the end of the world to delay your free explosive shot by one extra shot. So for people who were not sure what to do, the advice was always fire two back to back and then interleave one for the third, or fire just as long as one of the two pauses had an interleave in there. The point is now you're spreading out your explosive shot damage over a much longer period than you would if you were able to just spam your explosive shot and just get them all out right away. So that is sort of a little PvP buff right there.
Yeah, and in the perfect world, if in the perfect world, lock and load procs a second after you fire explosive shot, so you can actually get 4 back to back.
That does happen sometimes. Just not
and you're still good. If that happens, all 4 of them you can fire in a row. You're not going to lose any damage. You're never going to be able to clip. Basically, it's an exciting change.
Well, I was going to say, that's the kind of thing that I would have looked up, whether I should interleave 2 or maybe stick to the 1 or what, but it's never happened, so it doesn't come up. The only time my lock mode ever procs is when I delay my explosive shot because it's been a focus.
I'm familiar with that, where it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to push my explosive shot back by like almost a second so I can get one more shot off, and it procs. If I had fired it, I would have gotten 3 or 4. Yep. Yeah,
and that's the only way it happens for me.
Yeah. So there was also an interesting post from Ghostcrawler about Hunter crowd control and a crowd control skill. And some people were basically saying that anything that applies a dot should turn off when we Wyvern Sting or Frost Trap something. And Ghostcrawler didn't entirely agree. I mean, he basically said, if you CC someone and your auto shot gets turned off, but piercing shots or wild quiver breaks the CC, it's like, then that's a bug. That needs to be fixed. He's like, but if you CC someone and then keep shooting at them, then you're a bad hunter, and it's fine if that breaks CC. It's like, in other words, you're supposed to choose between crowd control or damage. And then he goes on to say that Serpent Sting is a bit of a gray area because you do have control over whether you put it up. You could be in a situation where you have a dot up and then decide to CC that target, but that situation happens for a variety of classes, and we usually provide glyphs for that situation. And so basically what he's saying is stuff that puts a dot on without your control, which is stuff like piercing shots, that should turn off when you CC. But stuff that you choose to put up, like shooting someone, that's your fault. Now, I kind of disagree about the Serpent Sting thing, because it's not like it's something that ever expires. As long as we're attacking the target, it's probably going to keep getting refreshed.
Well, not in PvP. I mean, if we're talking about CC in dungeons or something, that is accurate. But in PvP, it's the only time you would put up a Serpent Sting is when you need the burst, when you have the focus, or when you need to cover up one of your debuffs for dispels. But mostly because of the fact that you can't CC, and also because of the fact that it just, the damage per focus is too spread out.
Yeah.
Burst is more important. But one thing I would like to say is that he should add to his list. When he says something like he specifically said piercing shots or wild quiver are his two examples because those are core hunter abilities. But if we ever get weapons like we're using now, I can tell you that every class in the game right now that PvPs is actively seeking a high-end Deathwing eye level weapon for PvP, just because even though you lose a bit of resilience and stuff, you get so much out of it. Like a high DPS weapon for a marksman hunter as PvP is a huge deal, as we all know. However, that stupid proc, I swear to God, only seems to proc when you scattershot someone. And the only time you scattershot someone, usually, is when you want to trap them. So there you have that stupid proc, I tell you, it's the bane of my existence. Just like my explosive shots only ever, lock and load only ever procking right after I miss my explosive shot availability. But anyways, I think if he provides a glyph for a trap, then that glyph should be removes, all dots except Serpent Sting, if that's what they want to do. Oh no, the Serpent Sting is the one that he said he wants, but
He said that once though. Yeah, the funky case that maybe there should be a glyph to do it.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution to this is, but I'll bet you they're going to get it wrong. See, I have faith in their ability to program the Murder of Crows so it doesn't massacre my video card or somebody else's video card, but I'm not sure they're going to get this right. They've been confused a lot. Not confused, but they've made a lot of decisions in the past about Hunter CC that have made the class sort of what it is now with ridiculously high skill cap. And the potential to be great, but the average person just that wants to go and get some PvP done is not going to be that great. And,
I think the situation right now is even more than that, right? It's the really great PvP hunters are awesome, and the good PvP hunters aren't that good.
Yeah, like if you take a good warlock or a good mage or a good, druid of some sort, they're going to be able to achieve a certain average level of success in PvP. If you take that person, you transform them into a hunter, or you take an equivalently skilled and geared hunter, and you compare that average rating, I suspect that would be lower. Because, right now with minimum range and the strange comps that hunters are in, and just the overall, we're like the redheaded stepchild of PvP. There are times that we're incredibly good, and there are times that we're incredibly bad, and there are times that no matter whether we're good or bad, someone like Jungyup goes up and wins the tournament. So Blizzard's like, clearly you guys are doing fine, so stop bugging us. Anyways.
All right, well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Should we move on to some Q&A then?
Yeah, if we have some, I'd be curious to see what reasons there are to get Leiluin to the U.S. And by the way, I'd like to point out that you don't have to move to the States to play on an American server. You could move to a much better country like Canada. Just saying.
Okay, but Canada's not really a country so much as it is like a territory of the U.S.
I thought you were going to say like a hat.
No, it's a place for the commies. It's what it is.
It's a place for the people who don't have to pay for their own health care and want the hot women.
Messed up? Yeah, how messed up is that, dude? Just clearly, poor people should die on the streets. I mean, that's just
I don't want to get into the American way, but I will talk at length about the Canadian way and how awesome it is. All right.
So
listener Q&A.
Yeah. So Primoc says that. A really compelling reason for Leiluin. A really compelling reason for Leiluin to move to the U.S. is to see the Cockroach Hall of Fame in Plano, Texas. Duh.
Oh my God, that exists.
Apparently.
You know what? Americans have a long and interesting tradition of putting the most random, interesting things on the side of highways. I'll bet you Plano, Texas is where that started. So, man, if I ever go to Plano, I know where my first stop is, after the airport.
So he says, I have a question, but a commercial was playing when they talked about it. I don't know if you... Yeah, I know. So it's like, I don't know if you guys talked about it, but I'll ask anyway. Here's a question. I can't do LFR anymore without somebody whispering, roll on the insert gear here for me, Kay? I'm unsure about etiquette on this one and could use some advice. On one hand, rolling for some random stranger seems unsportsmanlike. If I roll an LFR shoulders while wearing heroic version, it's going to cause a whole big you suck fest. On the other hand, who wouldn't want the gear to go to some random hunter than some random druid? What is it? So I think the etiquette is this, and I'm just going to tell you what I feel the LFR etiquette is, whether it's right or wrong. I'm going to say what I feel the LFR etiquette is, and you can tell me if you think this is true. I feel like the LFR etiquette is if you join LFR with a group of people, as most people do, it is just done that everybody rolls on stuff for their guildmates. But if it's a complete stranger, like, dude, roll on this for me, Kay. Yeah, you don't. That's just weird.
Yeah, even if they're a hunter, I know we have a strong desire to make, to try and support our brethren, even if they're from other realms, and, we happen to be competing with them for certain other drops. Please remember that although they must be an awesome person to play a hunter, they are still playing a game like everyone else, and unless you're part of a guild and doing something that's equally unfair but sort of accepted because you're part of a guild and grouping together, it's really not fair to go and roll on something that you can't use. That said, if you challenge them to show you their spore bat and they actually do it, and they mention to you that they are indeed an actual hunter, not a huntard, then I would consider bending the rules, because at that point, even though you didn't join with them, they are your friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in a perfect world in LFR, people would just roll for their own damn gear. But since that's not the way the mechanics of LFR work,
And that's stupid.
and that's Blizzard's fault.
I
Yeah,
cannot wait until we go to this new system where there is no specific loot that either goes to you or you. There is just your chance of getting any particular item off the loot table based on, and that nobody else can see. That is going to make me so happy. That takes away the whole concept of collusion and competition and things that are not fair, that are possible to do by game rules, but they're not socially acceptable. That is just absolutely dumb. They should not set up a system like that, especially in LFR, where you know that even if you do see the person again, they won't even recognize you unless they take great pains to write down both your name and your realm. And even then, even if they did see you and recognize you, there's nothing they can do, because the game prohibits any retribution. All it does is allows people to be douchebags about how they roll on stuff. So that's not, I mean, it's an unfortunate situation. The tragedy of the commons. If you don't do it, somebody else will. If you don't roll on things you don't need for your guildmate, then the other group of guildies will roll on stuff they don't need for their guildmates, and overall they'll get more loot than you. So it's a question. There is no right answer. There's no fair answer.
Right.
There's no just answer. There's just
Yeah, and I really think, because this is a conversation that Hrist and I had all the time when we were running a raiding guild, is I am really strongly of the belief that any kind of incentive system, right, which is like, here's a system by which you get gear. That's an incentive system. The incentive system should be designed for people to game it. Gaming the system should encourage the kind of behavior you want, because come on, these are gamers. They're going to game the system to do what's best for them, and sometimes what's best for them is what's best for their guild, right? Mm. So I think it's just
that's surprisingly hard to set up. That's very hard to set up, and I got to give mad props, to use a horrible expression, to Blizzard for realizing that it is an intractable problem as long as you think of loot as something that is on a boss until it's distributed fairly or unfairly. The way that they're moving, which is to have random groups of people be allocated loot individually, regardless, you could have an extremely rare raid where you were to do the equivalent of Deathwing, and every single melee DPS got the equivalent of Girthalak, as opposed to every hunter getting it. And that could just happen because there is no limitation on, it's going to drop on average a certain average number of things per player, but that doesn't have to be enforced centrally and then distributed unfairly. So the way that they're going, where, every time you kill a boss, you get a chance that something for you will drop off of that boss, and you won't be able to trade it to other players. That is the only way to get around this whole question of fairness. And I think they should have done it a long time ago. I would even possibly support that for guilds. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail about this, and I know I like the idea of being able to allocate gear in my guild based on what's going to do the best for the guild, but we decided a long time ago that what's going to be the best for the guild is a built-in sense of fairness that we can't even break. So we have a system called EPGP, which is not perfect because it's gameable like every other system, and it allows people who work more to get more loot. and that seems to be as fair as we can possibly get. I would, if I were playing on a loot council guild where we just decided who would get the most benefit from the gear and made that be the deciding factor of where it goes, then we would be spending a lot more time distributing loot and having a lot more drama and rage quits because of it. So we decided against that. We're just like, okay, we'll give up to the small optimization of being able to manually choose in favor of the optimization of being able to do it quickly and fairly without thinking about it.
Sure. Although I got to say, I think that I think the best loot system, and I know we disagree, I think the best system is a loot council as long as A, that loot council it consists of one person, and B, that person is of unimpeachable impartiality. Because when we did it, man, Frisk gave out the loot. He decided where it went. No one ever complained. And he decided where it went based on what was best for the raid. And so
because he hates everybody equally. I understand. I've met the guy.
And it works
on Skype.
And it worked really well for the raid. And you know what? Loot wasn't given out perfectly fairly because somebody who sucked or didn't come often, they would still get loot every now and then. But the people who were always there and top performers would get more because that was better for the raid. But anyhow, so I think the answer is do whatever the hell you want because right now the system is so effed up.
Well, that wasn't my answer. My answer was be a nice guy anyways. But anyways, let's go on to the next question.
All right. So Nekri says, Layla Wynn says, most places along the California coast are amazing weather-wise. There's lots of fun stuff to do in the Bay Area and near San Diego. Plus there's Disneyland, and we have BlizzCon here. Ooh, good argument. BlizzCon. Right.
Those were several good arguments.
Right, and just moderate that with eventually it's going to fall into the ocean. And
I was going to make that joke.
Yeah, and that event is overdue at this point. So but other than that, until then, it's awesome.
Into the ocean. I mean, if you were looking at it from the bird's eye view, the ground would kind of shiver a bit. But on the ground, all of the buildings are going to collapse or something.
And the ocean is going to come in too. Yeah, I mean it's
terrifying stuff.
So his question is, has there been any feedback regarding the cooldown of Stampede to hopefully bring its cooldown to a more reasonable level for raiding? The answer is no. We have not heard anything saying, and just so people are aware of the problem, Stampede was moved to, I believe, a 10-minute cooldown, which I think exists so that it can't be used in Arena, right?
I think so. They could probably reset it when you die and are not battle resed, just like they do for the heroism debuff. But I don't know if that is something that is in the plans. They certainly haven't talked about it. My recommendation, while all the developers are reading the forums on a regular basis, go into the beta forums, mention it, and get a discussion going, and hopefully one of the devs will read it and make a decision, and it'll either change or it won't. I suspect that they probably want this available for every attempt, especially when you're learning on progression. But I also suspect that right now they don't want it available in Arena.
Yeah, and there was a comment. There was a blue post, not about Stampede. I don't remember. I don't remember where it was, so I can't dig it up. But it wasn't about Stampede. But they just talked about long cooldown abilities should generally still be available for every boss attempt. And there was some vague comment about them having mechanics in place to accomplish that. Since there aren't any pre-mades, and I'm not level 87, I can't go use Stampede and get myself killed and come back to see if I can use it again. But yeah, no. But for people who aren't aware, the danger with the 10-minute cooldown is you're doing progression boss fights and you're wiping on a boss. It's like we fight the boss, we wipe, we come back in, and Stampede's on cooldown for this attempt. So I'm not going to have Stampede this time. Also, it's not usable with readiness because readiness only resets the cooldown of things less than 6 minutes with less than 6-minute cooldowns. But yeah, I think the reason they went to 10 minutes rather than 6 was to keep it out of Arena.
It strikes me as a little strange because, I know it's a lot of extra damage, but it doesn't last that long, and it's not so ridiculously overpowered that it seems like they need to be so afraid of. Maybe pets are scaling better or differently than they are on live, but it's like it feels like they're putting this massive restriction on something that's just really not that big a deal.
Well, I mean, I guess from the arena perspective, it's lots of damage. It's potentially lots of burst healing.
Yeah, but oh well, that's part. Yeah, but lots of burst anything. It's the healing comes at the expense of damage, and whether you're healing or damage, it amounts to the same thing of pressure. But the point is,
You,
Chamois
you,
can do it. They have the exact same ability, except they called spirit wolves or ghost wolves or something.
yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be curious to if I ever make it to level 90, which still makes me sad. Which still, if you want to level my beta hunter, please let me know.
Don't you need
Um,
your authenticator to get onto beta?
Not if I disable it.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea. Nobody helped Frostheim level his character. As much as I don't want him to have to do the work
Whatever.
himself,
I can hook up if somebody trustworthy, approaches me that I know. I can hook up with and be like, okay, dude, we'll just have scheduled times because I don't want it to conflict with what I'm going to be doing stuff, and we'll just Skype and I'll tell you the authenticator number for that login.
I suppose that would work.
Yeah,
But
there's ways around this. Anyhow, but so yes, our hope is that it'll still be usable on every boss attempt. Um, but yeah, we don't know
make
yet.
sure, somebody should go start a thread about that, just in case they're not aware.
All right.
I would
Well,
like
let's
to
see.
add that Necrease won the Layla challenge because as soon as she heard that BlizzCon was in California, she's on her way next year.
Sweet.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the cost of living in California might not overwhelm the cost of a flight from somewhere in Northern Europe. But anyways,
It's
do we have
true.
any?
California, I suspect, is probably a little bit more expensive to live in than Norway.
Well, Norway is if you're a Norwegian, it's not that bad. But if you're not Norwegian, it's ridiculously expensive. It's like worse than Paris, I think.
Um,
Anywho,
But she
Anywho,
could
do
move
so
have
to
a
Canada and then drive down.
so we got one more. Let's try to zip through this.
yes.
War Vinny says, "I have 5 favorite women that play WoW that I kind of know there in the U.S. You, I assume that's referring to Ollie Sonder, Bella, Lycantis, Michelle Morrow, and my lovely wife." So I guess War Vinny is saying there's lots of awesome WoW chicks in the U.S., or at least 5 of them.
Okay. What's the
Uh, so
question?
A question: Where is the WHBBQ cookout usually at, and when?
Huh.
Um, it is. It's well, traditionally, it's always been at Arst's house, but Arst actually just recently got married and moving into a different house, and guess he's going to be renting out his house, so probably not going to be able to have it there again. So I'm not sure where it'll be, but it'll be in Minnesota. It'll be in the Minneapolis area. And as for when, historically, we've done it at the beginning of summer. This year, we were kind of talking about doing it at the end of summer or early fall, um, partially because of the no BlizzCon thing.
Hmm.
And then, can you ask Frost about this, please? Is there any way you could delete the old, outdated info on the WHU page? I'm not sure what old, outdated info you're talking about, because the WHU page doesn't actually talk about the barbecue in any way.
Fair enough. Well, we can take that offline. That said, it's been an hour, an
But
awesome,
we
awesome
have
hour.
not discussed the Hunter raid. We really need to touch on that.
What do you mean, the next Hunter raid?
The WHU All Hunter raid.
The one that killed Maloriak and what's his name?
Atromedes.
Atromedes.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning of the show.
Did we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
where were you?
That was in the
Uh,
announcements for the very
I
first
just
No,
one.
said
no, you skipped it. You went, all right, let's talk about the news, and we're like, Allie, and we went back and did the announcements, and then you
Yeah.
must have been so upset with us, not following your forced segue
my
that
tyranny.
yes, that you just walked away in disgust and you missed the best part.
Can't believe you're anybody's favorite WoW hunter woman.
Aw.
Um, but but as Arth points out, the next several raids are scheduled. July 21st is the next one, so big gap before that one,
Yeah, it's my birthday.
and then after that is July 28th. So we're going to do on the 21st, the 28th, and then August 18th.
So that's my birthday and then my anniversary. So needless to say, I'll be unavailable.
Well, yeah, not like you made it to any of the others.
No, I'm pretty useless. Even if I had been there, I would have been like, the news would have been, well, we almost got these two down, but there was some just dumbass hunter who could not do any of the things that he claimed to be able to do, and was constantly AFK and just not that smart or helpful in any way, slowing us down. So next week he's not coming, and we'll be able to get these guys down. So it just shortcut that whole thing. Anywho,
well, you've been conducting a scientific study that princess tables do not help your DPS.
it's nowhere near my computers. Maybe I need to move it closer.
This is awesome. In the chat room now, we just have a whole bunch of people talking about how their birthday is also right around then. So apparently a lot of people's parents have been getting on at like the end of October.
I think that a lot of people who had the fortune to be born around the same time happen to play hunters. So that makes no sense. But anyways, you have been listening to episode 135 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from Out DPS, WoW Insider, and Call to Auction.
And this is Frosttime from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frosttime WHU on Twitter.
And I'm Molly Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast.
You can check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or if you don't use any of that stuff, we have the raw RSS feeds on the show notes.
And if you like us, please don't be shy about heading over to the Hunter School Kickstarter and helping support new Hunter music, including the song that you hear at the beginning and end of every podcast.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com and have your name mangled on air.
Otherwise, I'm going to name it Darkbrew Takes Singing Lessons. Remember to spay or neuter your feral druids.
I don't know how anyone expects to get any work done around here if we don't have any ale. Our beer level here in this podcast is dangerously low.
And don't forget to pay your dues.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Rated in game, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jadan, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnaros. Which one have we killed the most?